Today, we are talking about our favorite business model within all of real estate. If you're like us, you've been through a bunch of them already. Wholesaling, owning rentals, doing flips. Maybe you're in the mortgage industry. Maybe you're a real estate agent. And after we've been through all of those way earlier in our career, we've realized that our favorite business model in all of real estate investing is private lending.
Welcome to the Private Lenders Podcast with your hosts from Hard Money Bankers, Jason Balin and Chris Haddon. This podcast is sponsored by hardmoneymastermind.com.
So let me explain what I mean by private lending first, in case you're not familiar. So we lend private capital on investment real estate deals. And that can take a number of different forms. It could be a fix and flip kind of loan. It could be a bridge loan on a rental property owned. It could be an acquisition loan on a small commercial property. If the source of the capital is private money, maybe your funds, maybe investor funds, that's what we're talking about here. That's the business model. And we're going to break down a number of different reasons why we love it so much.
Yeah, we've got about 5 reasons, maybe 6. And I think that everybody watching or listening is probably going to agree with us, because if you take, let's just say, fixing and flipping or wholesaling or owning rental properties or buying commercial properties, I don't personally believe that all of them have all of these benefits to doing some, right? Like, I believe that this particular niche of private lending or running a hard money lending company just has so much to offer. So let's start with the first one, which is risk versus reward. Now, obviously, if you've ever heard this statement, because it's a bold statement, but the first mortgage lender should always have the least amount of risk. So typically in your capital stack, the owner of real estate, right, like the operator, the owner of the equity who's putting up the money, they typically have the most amount of risk. On one spectrum, the other side, the bank typically has the least amount of risk, right? And then in between there, you might have mezzanine debt or limited partners, or you might have, second deeds of trust, lien holders and stuff like that. But the first mortgage lender should have the least amount of risk. Now, typically with the least amount of risk, one would think that you also have the least amount of reward, right? Like if you're a flipper on a property and you execute really well, yeah, you might have the most risk because you could lose your money first, but you also can make very, very high active rate of return, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100% on your money, maybe even more. To own a hard money lending company or a private lender, typically, though, you're still making double-digit interest rates return, if not higher. You're lending out money at 12, 13, 14%. You're getting a few points. Maybe you can turn that money multiple times a year. Most active lenders still should be able to achieve, close to about 20% rate of return annualized.
Yeah, so it is important to point out that there is risk in being a private money lender, even as a first mortgage, right? Like anytime you're putting money into an investment deal, there is a certain level of risk. But we believe that risk can be mitigated by proper underwriting and everything else, and the leverage that you're giving. I mean, that's one of the main ways that lenders make a mistake and shift that risk is by doing too high of a leverage on the property, and they're putting more of the risk on themselves, less on anyone else who's involved, which we believe is a mistake. And yes, the rate of return is double digits just based on the note rate and the points, and you can they don't necessarily stay out for a whole year, so you might be able to turn that same chunk of capital twice in 1 year. So you're getting the points twice, and so you're getting near a 20% rate of return, which we believe is awesome. Another aspect of private lending that we love is the money model. In case you're familiar with Alex Hormozy, this is a term of his, and he just put out a book by this name. Here's what it means. When are you getting paid and how much is basically what it means for doing this kind of deal. And one of the reasons that we like private lending so much is that you get a bunch up front in terms of origination fees. That's another term for the points. And then there's also a couple junk fees typically. So you're getting a good, average like 10 to 15,000 per deal based on your loan amount up front. And then you're getting payments every month for as long as that loan is outstanding. Now, we're going to talk about the investment vehicle later on, but like just using the example of, say, you have capital investors, and based on a common split in the industry, they're going to get 80% of any payment that comes in the door, and you're going to get about 20. That's very common. If you lend out a 12.99, pay them 10. It's a typical way to set it up. So not only do you get a bunch of money up front, you also get that recurring revenue on every loan outstanding for as long as it's outstanding, which makes a great money model.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's not many business models that you can say that. If you're a real estate investor, you're fixing and flipping houses. Typically, you get paid when you resell the house, one lump sum. If you're a rental property owner, you make some, quote unquote passive / not so passive, but passive income when your tenants pay rent every month. But there's not many real estate investment models where you're actually making upfront money and recurring money. And the beauty of that, if you've been an entrepreneur or if you've owned businesses or in real estate, the beauty of it is when you're making money up front, you can cover your overhead and your costs in real time, especially your marketing costs, because then you can go out and you can find more deals, more opportunities, grow your business because it's, you're making that money in real time. And then you also have the recurring income that's coming in month after month after month. So having both options is great. Another reason why this is our favorite business model is the efficiency on time. If you ever flipped a house before, it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of time. It's hard to flip a house, right? Same thing with rental properties. You have to, obviously find the property, potentially fix it up, put a tenant in there, deal with, toilets and roofs and maintenance and upkeep and everything over and over and over and over. On this end, for the most part, you're generating business, you're doing a loan for them, and then they're making monthly payments. If they go over the construction budget or something happens, that's more the borrower problem, not necessarily you as a lender problem. Now, obviously, there's challenges. Obviously, there's defaults. And one of the biggest things that, a lot of folks in our community suffer from is they're not doing great deals. And if they're not doing the best deals that they can be doing, then the model ends up being less efficient than it should, right? Because they're doing headaches and they're making money today, but they might not be doing the strongest deals. And then they turn into defaults down the road. But if you're doing good, solid, safe loans, then it's significantly easier down the road and it becomes a lot more efficient. And it also depends on the size operation that you have. If you have quite a bit of your own money and you're not raising capital and you're just lending money out yourself to repeat borrowers over and over and over, the amount of money you're making per hour on your time is very, 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 very high, right? But if you're a startup and as you're getting started, yes, just like any other business, you gotta put some sweat equity into it and you got to spend more time to try to find deals and raise capital and put processes in place and systems and learn how to process loans and meet vendors and things like that. But overall, significantly easier than most other real estate models.
Okay, on to the next one. The next aspect of this business model that makes us like it so much is repeat customers. This model sets up for your borrowers, your clients who borrow from you, to come back over and over. The nature of a real estate investor's business is that they do multiple deals. Sometimes it's one at a time. Sometimes they have a number going at any given time. And so it sets up for your customers to keep coming back over and over. And think about how valuable that is in terms of your cost to acquire a customer, the CAC, CAC, as it's called in the marketing world. If you can spend, I don't know, a couple $1,000s to acquire a customer through paid ads, through whatever the vehicle might be, you're going to back it out immediately because you're going to make 10 to 15,000 as soon as you close a loan for them, plus the recurring revenue, plus them coming back as a repeat customer for more deals later on, for months, for years, hopefully 10 years, right? Like some people, you don't hear from too much anymore. And then some people we've been lending to for over 10 years, which is fantastic in terms of, like I was saying, the cost to acquire a customer and how valuable that lifetime value, LTV, lifetime value of a customer can be in this model.
Yeah, no, it's a beautiful thing. Not many real estate investment models are you working with the same clients over and over and over and over and over and over. So my personal favorite part of this business model, and I think Chris could probably agree as well, is the investment vehicle component. Not only is it a business, but it's also an investment vehicle. And what do I mean by that? Well, if you're the lender and you have your own personal capital that you're putting into these deals, you're making that high, interest rate return. So if we're lending out at 13% rate and 3 points, not only are you making the points on the front end, but you're making the 13% interest rate. You're not sharing that with, a capital investor that you're working with, or the fund that you're working with. Like, you're keeping that money yourself. So that's the beauty of it, right? It ends up being an active business and a passive investment at the same time. And that's really what it was. And, we had a wake up call. I mean, we're going on year 19 in this business, and it didn't happen, immediately, but it happened quickly, like within 2 or 3 years, where we realized, hey, what we set up isn't awesome, just a nice business model, but it's also a great investment vehicle. And, I remember looking at a 1099 INT that was sent out to one of our capital investors early on in the business. And, he was making substantially more money than we were. And Chris and I were in the business operating it, 24/7, grinding, trying to grow this company. He deployed a few $1 million through some of our deals with us. And, the amount of money he made was significantly higher than the amount of money that we did. And we realized, hey, nothing earns, there's nothing better than investing your own capital in some of these deals. And ever since that day happened over the last 15, 16 plus years, we've, allocated a lot of our own personal money and deployed it into this, because it is a never ending investment vehicle.
Yeah, and that's pretty rare. If you think in terms of business models, there aren't that many that not only earn a good profit, but also allow you to deploy capital into them as an investment vehicle. It's just not that common. There are some others in real estate, but anyway, guys, we appreciate you checking out the show. I hope you got some value from our breakdown of why this is our favorite business model within real estate investing. And if you want, feel free to come join us at hardmoneymastermind.com, and we'll see you here next time.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Private Lenders Podcast. Please note that the opinions stated by all the speakers on this show are only opinions and not intended for legal, financial, or accounting advice. Please make sure to always check with your own legal, accounting, and financial professionals. If you enjoyed this episode of the Private Lenders Podcast, we'd appreciate it if you would spread the word. Make sure to check out hardmoneymastermind.com, the #1 free community for new and experienced private and hard money lenders.